Thanks, Greta. Feast your eyes on that belly as she walks off stage, because this is probably the last time you're going to see that belly. Since we have Super Bowl next week, little baby boy Miller is going to be here. It's kind of a scary thought if it looks anything like Kyle. But we are facing that reality now. There's a good chance that you're going to see a baby next time we get together, which is pretty cool. Hey, welcome if you're visiting with us today, or if not, we're glad you're here. We will begin today, as our tradition is, to pray for another church in town. It's really, really important to us. And we're going to pray for the Catholic Church again today. And Father Pat, my good friend, I'm having lunch with him next week, so he was on my mind. So if you're the praying type, join us, and we'll lift up Father Pat in our time together as well. Father, thanks for today and this family, this space that we're blessed with to meet so freely and openly, to enjoy each other and to worship and to look at your word. And God, we thank you for Father Pat and his leadership. God, thanks for his amazing ability to unify the Catholic Church in this town over the last decade. His leadership, his passionate love for you, God. And we thank you for all of our brothers and sisters that meet there. We love them. We also thank you for Father Matt, God, over at the university. Just thank you for the ministry of so many that they have. Bless them. Let them be so aware of your presence, and let them know of our deep love for them as we always grow closer to each other, as we draw close to you together. God, we also pray, please, will you open our eyes and our minds and our ears for what you might have for us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, many of you know I am just back this week. It's actually kind of nice. I just went my fourth and final time to Scotland for a school program I'm doing at the University of St. Andrews. It's really nice because usually I get back really late on a Saturday night. This time I got back on Wednesday night, so I'm all refreshed and ready to go. So you better be ready for some real wisdom coming at you. This is good stuff. So I'm very, very excited. I'm very, very thankful for, in my absence, Tanita and Clay. I know you were in good hands with them. In fact, you're probably a little disappointed that I'm back. I know they did a great job. I'm very thankful for them filling in my absence. I am going to do this to share this time. When I was a kid, I had this, at Thanksgivings and Christmas, my mom was one of 8 children, so we had all these aunts and uncles, and there was this tradition that if anybody went on a big, long, crazy trip around the world to somewhere like California, they would share their pictures with all of us. And this will date me a little bit, but they were always on slides. You put the slides in that circular machine. Some of you in college have no idea what I'm talking about, which is crazy. But we would then be subjected to crazy uncle whoever or crazy aunt whoever boring us to death with a slideshow of their trip. That's what I'm going to do to you right now, because we are family. This is a bonding experience. I'm going to show you pictures of my trip over to Scotland. I also got to go to Barcelona and Istanbul and Greece. I had a really great trip because basically the way it worked, the reason I got back on a Wednesday, I got the very cheapest airline tickets I could possibly find, and the way that works is to London, and the way that works is to go on Wednesdays at this particular time. So they gave me a few days to hop around. I just found some trips on Ryanair and some cheap airlines and bought them myself and flew to these different cool places. But I have some pictures. Here's the problem. I threw this together very last second. I'm sure you're shocked. Right before the first service, I just sent like a mass email to Marco, who's running slides today. So they're in a really random order, and I'm just going to vomit information on you because I want you to have the crazy uncle experience. It's just more authentic that way. So let's show some random pictures here. Now this one I posted a couple of these on Facebook. If we're Facebook friends, you've already seen this one. This is the inside of the cathedral. Look at those lights. What fancy. That's pretty cool. This is the Sagrada Familia, or the Holy Family. It's a Catholic church in Barcelona. It was designed by this architect named Antonio Gaudi. He's an amazing architect. A lot of stuff in Barcelona was designed by him. And I can tell you that I could not have cared less about architecture in my life at all until I walked into this building. I posted this on Facebook, but they started building this cathedral in 1882, and they're planning on finishing it in 2026. And this is not ancient times, this is the 20th century, 130 years of building this thing. He tried to incorporate all these elements to bring glory to God. These things are supposed to be like the trees of a forest. I mean, you can't really grasp the scale of it, but that was a really cool place. Barcelona was a great experience. And I didn't tell the first service about this, but since you guys don't have another service after you, I can talk a little longer because there's really nothing stopping me. So I'm going to vomit more stories on you guys. But while I was in Barcelona, one of the cool things was I was in my hostel. You know, a hostel over there is €6 or something like that. And I was looking on my phone, and the Green Bay Packers were playing the Seattle Seahawks. And I kind of wanted the Seahawks to win. I like both those quarterbacks, but I was watching it. It was looking pretty bad. But I thought, you know what? I ought to go downtown Barcelona and just see if they show American football in the middle of the night. So I walked to this bar, and I got to this Irish pub that had about 500 to 1,000 people packed in there. And they were showing on every screen this playoff game. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I've never been in an American place more fired up about American football. I stayed in there, and I literally lost my voice, and I didn't know anybody there. I'm just like this loner screaming at the screen because it was an amazing game. I'm sure you saw it. That's extra. That was a blessing for you, so enjoy that. Let's go to the next picture here. This is Barcelona also. For service, I kind of botched this because I said I didn't know what to say about this picture. So I was like, oh, this is where I ran into some prostitutes, and then I just left it at that. And then I realized I need to explain a little bit more, but it actually was pretty sad. There were some girls from Ghana and some other place that came up because I looked like a target, I guess. I was a tourist-looking guy, it was obvious. And they started talking to me. I didn't know what was going on. This sweet African girl from Ghana was saying, hey, can we hang out? I was like, oh, I guess so. I didn't know what's going on. I was like, I'm walking down to that statue over there. She's like, oh, I'll walk with you. We'll have a good time. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it'll be fun. So here we go. And so as we're walking along, she says something, and finally it clicks in me what's going on here. I'm not that popular. And I said, I said, hey, I just want to be very clear. That's not going to happen. I'm a very happily married man. I'm not interested. She goes, oh, your wife will never know. And I was like, no, this is not happening. I want to be very clear with you. And she just kept going. It's a cold night. I'll keep you warm. And it was actually really, really sad. I finally just grabbed her and I shook her hand. I just said, I think you're a beautiful, wonderful person. I wish the very best for you. And I was actually kind of haunted by it later. I was like, gosh, what should I have done? This is not what the message is about today. I'm just kind of vomiting. So, and I ran into another girl. I didn't tell the first service this because that girl had worked so hard. And this is not appropriate for church, but I just can't stop myself right now. She had worked so hard in English to kind of, that whole thing. And then I ran into this other girl. I walked out of a restaurant, had some tapas, and this girl goes, let's do it! And I was like, oh, okay. No, thank you. I appreciate your upfront approach, but not interested. So, that's that. I don't know why I'm doing this. Let's keep going. That is the oldest pub in England. I met a friend here. There has been a pub here since the year 763. Let that just wash over you for a second. That's pretty great. Next picture. There's no point to me showing you that. This is, I didn't talk about it last time, but this is the details at the Sagrada Familia. I mean, they've been building forever, but they had designed, even in the little letters, this is a letter about this big. There's this little sculpture. This is Charitas. It's kind of faded out. That's Latin for love. And actually, I thought of Marca and our 4 kids, and it inspired me to write a poem for my wife. I love forcing you guys to make that noise. And you are never going to hear that poem. That's just for her. Next picture. All right, this is the Cathedral of Barcelona. Pretty cool. That's just an old cathedral. They're everywhere in Europe. Next. Okay, this is cool. This is where I really want to get to. This is Istanbul. How many of you have been to Istanbul? Probably, there's actually only 6 or 7 in the first service. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, something like that. It's a cool place. I've always heard that Istanbul is this amazing city you have to see. Istanbul is at the confluence of 2 continents. It's a city of 14 million, and it's Europe and Asia come together in one spot. It's very Muslim. In fact, it's even more and more conservative Islamic government lately. It's been really intense. It's a safe place to visit, but it was amazing seeing this is the Blue Mosque, and I'll show you the Hagia Sophia in a second. But all throughout the day, the Muslim prayer chants that are kind of eerily beautiful just go out from speakers over the whole city. And I went to the Grand Bazaar, and I got some cool little stuff for my kids, which was fun. And I met some friends from a hostel, and we kind of traveled around together. There's a British guy and a Canadian girl, and we went up to this rooftop. We're looking, but do you have the picture from the rooftop looking out over Istanbul? Yes, this is up on top. We were looking out over Istanbul, and I really wanted to see a whirling dervish. You guys ever heard of these guys? Anybody? Whirling derby? Anybody? There's one. Yeah, thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. Yes, it kind of came from this ancient, it was kind of a Muslim philosopher or a contemplative figure, be kind of like a monk. And he had these followers in the middle of Turkey, and they would have this kind of aesthetic religious experience where they would just spin, and they would have this great experience. I was like, well, yeah, you're busy, but that was their religious thing. And it kind of evolved in this art form. I really wanted to see one. So one of my friends said, I know where one of those is. So he took us to this little Turkish underground kind of pub place where they smoke hookah. There's these big, hookah is like tobacco that goes through the pipe thing. And that's a big thing. All these Turkish people come together and smoke hookah. And we're in there packed together, really, really tightly knit. And yeah, that's me smoking hookah. This was really funny. 2 things are funny about this. One, my kids saw this picture and they said, hey, what instrument is that you're playing? I was like, that's the hookah instrument. Enough said. And then the other funny thing about this is this popped up in the first service, and I didn't think that I sent this picture to be shown, so I thought Marcus snuck this into the slideshow to throw me into the bus in front of all you guys, so I was telling everybody, oh, Marca, you got me, and I realized later that I did accidentally send it to her, and I threw her under the bus for no reason. So this is me apologizing to her so that I don't have to sleep on the couch tonight, and it means nothing to you because you weren't in the first service. But my wife did not frame me in this picture. But when I was there, this is kind of like the crazy uncle, isn't it? So, I love it. So, when I'm there, this is really cool. The Turkish people are so amazing. I mean, they're so kind, so welcoming. We're packed in there and we're hanging out. And this guy sitting behind me just kind of puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, hey, my friend, where are you from? I guess it was obvious I wasn't a local. And I said, oh, I'm from Arizona. And he said, oh, great. What do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a pastor of a church. And he goes, I don't understand. And I said, the church, I'm a pastor. I don't know any other English way of saying that. And he goes, the Pope. You're the Pope. And I go, well, no, I mean, man, you're kind of getting the gist. And he goes, oh, you're the little Pope. I was like, okay, yeah, that's probably as close as we're going to get now. So then he got really, really interested. He turned close to me and he put his hand on my inner thigh right here, which apparently is Turkish for I love you or something. And he literally left it there the rest of the time. So I just put my arm around his shoulder because I didn't know what to do. So we're just snuggling. This guy's name is Bilal. He's great. I loved him. He was so nice. But he was really, really interested in me as a little pope because he is a very, very devout Muslim guy. So the first thing he said, he said, so you believe in 3 gods instead of 1, And I was like, oh, no. It's like, I don't think we're going to get the Trinity figured out through our English barrier, But I was just going, you talk about Allah, the God of the universe, and we believe in the God of the universe. I'm just trying to find common ground with this guy, And he's going, and he sits at our table and he buys us a round of apple tea and he buys us these Turkish drinks that are really cool. And he's just grilling me. He's like, but you don't think, and he's just criticizing Christianity. He's just saying how crazy we are and how we took Jesus. Because the Quran actually talks about Jesus. That's got a different version of Jesus. Our Muslim friends believe that Jesus had a virgin birth and he was perfect, but they have kind of a different version. He was saying, how could you possibly believe Jesus God? And it was actually getting kind of intense, to be honest with you. He was very passionate about this. And I was a little bit scared. I shouldn't have been. I was very safe. But I just realized that he was really kind of getting out of me what I believe. And I just said, hey, Bilal, we're snuggling still, hand in the inner thigh. I said, I love you. And he was kind of taken aback. And I'm like, well, you're holding my inner thigh. I don't know how that bothers you. I said, I love you. I said, do you love me? He said, yeah. I said, we're friends, right? Friends. And I said, I'd love to talk to you about this, but only if it's in the context that we love each other and we respect each other. And he said, oh, yeah, that's great. And so he finally, after he really criticized Christianity for a long time, he said, okay, what do you think about Islam? Or what would you say against it? I said, I wouldn't say anything against it. I would love to talk to you as a friend about what we're talking about. And if you want to talk about Jesus, and you're really asking me what I think that the unique thing that we believe is that the 4 books that were written by his friends that knew him these decades after his life is a really great source to get to the historical Jesus. And something 700 years later, and I was very respectful. I was like, I know you believe Allah wrote the Quran. I was like, but if you really want to know, that's what I think. We just talked and we had fun. He actually ended up buying all of our hookah and all of our dinner because he was the son of the owner. I didn't know. And he paid for everything, and we became Facebook friends, which is the penultimate of human relationship. And it was really a sweet time, because I'm a religion nerd, and I just loved hanging out with this guy. And it was really kind of cool to have that kind of interaction with him. Let's keep going through pictures. This is going to take a while. This is the Hagia Sophia. This is really cool. This was a Christian church. So Istanbul used to be Constantinople because Constantine, the first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire, moved the headquarters of the Roman Empire there. And in 500, they built this enormous church. And then it flipped in the Ottoman Empire, and it was a mosque, and they built the minarets around it. Now it's secularized. The Muslims made it secular so everybody could come visit. Now it's a museum. Just really cool, nerdy history. Next picture. This is inside the Blue Mosque. Beautiful. I mean, the Arabic, you can't see it on here, but I had to take my shoes off, and the girl that I was traveling with had to borrow a shawl and cover her head. It was kind of a cool cultural experience. Keep going. Cruising along here. That's more of a picture. That's Istanbul. Next picture. This is cool. Changing gears. This is Greece. So when I first went to Greece, I landed in Thessaloniki, which is where the Thessalonian church was. And I rented a car, cruised across Greece. It was kind of shocking. I didn't realize their financial trouble, how bad it is. I mean, they're impoverished. But this picture, in reverse order, is actually when I got to Corinth. I had gone to the other places. And Corinth is an amazing site. I mean, just archaeologically. It's a beautiful, dug-up, ancient city from the 1st century, and this is the Temple of Apollo. This is where Paul would have been, right below this, selling tents. You have that other picture of Corinth? I think it's close by here. So these are little market booths from the 1st century where Paul would have been selling tents with Priscilla and Aquila and kind of forming the Corinthian church in those days. And it was just cool to see. And there's a place where you can actually see in Acts 17 where Paul got into some trouble, and Luke, the great historian, mentions the spot where he goes in front of the judge, and they've actually found the stone with the Greek inscription of that portico. So you're going, this is exactly where Paul was in Acts 17 when he got in trouble. Kind of nerdy, but really cool. Let's keep going. Cruising along. This is in Meteora, Greece. There's these big 1,000-foot cliffs, these monasteries. These are Greek Orthodox monasteries. Go to the next picture if that one is there. So this is like the Sedona area. I put this one on Facebook too, but there's actually a monastery right here, and right here, and here, and there. And they built, I think there's 12 of them, and they're all from about, I think they're from the 13th century. And it was during the Ottoman Empire, and they built them on these 1,000-foot cliffs so that they would be safe. And back then, they had to climb up there and use ladders that they would pull up to be safe. It was really a cool experience visiting that. Is there more? We got more of these? Yeah, it just keeps coming. This is Mars Hill in Athens. To me, this was probably the highlight of the trip. This is standing on Mars Hill where Paul debated the Stoic and Epicurean philosophers. And that's the Parthenon. That's kind of, you can't see it, but that glowing thing on the right there. It's also where Socrates was condemned to death. I mean, it's just great history, standing on this hill going, that's crazy that happened here. And there's crazy traffic in Athens. Next, side note. That's it. We made it. There's the Commons background. Pretty cool. Here's the deal. What I'm going to try to do to weave something relevant out of all that mess for you guys is I had a thought, 2 thoughts. One of them free of charge that has nothing to do at all with Christianity, just a human thought. My favorite part of the trip was actually being in Scotland. I actually went over there for school. And I have this very incredible, diverse group of friends. We have even new people joining our program from Shanghai and Singapore and Hong Kong, but Dubai and Slovakia and Egypt, just such a diverse group of friends. And what I realized as I was going to the pub with these guys and talking theology, that the greatest gift I could give myself was to just shut my mouth and listen to their stories. And what I realized in that context is that every single human being I was sitting with knew more about most everything than I knew about everything. And their experiences and their countries and their life, I just loved to learn from them. And what I take from that as a human experience is that's not just true in a diverse higher education setting. It's true where you sit right now. The person sitting next to you knows a whole lot about something you don't know about. And it was just a gift to me to kind of shut my mouth. In fact, I didn't talk about this in the first service, but it makes me think of that verse in James, the brother of Jesus, that we should be slow to speak and quick to listen. That's some wisdom coming from somebody who knew Jesus very closely. I thought that was cool. That has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. Here's what I thought about. What I thought about a lot, and what I want to focus on today is very simple. I was amazed everywhere I went how obviously, obnoxiously American I was. I can't hide it. I thought the beard would smooth it over in Istanbul. I would fit in. It didn't work. I was obviously American. Even in the UK, instantly my accent would give me away. I was in this other pub, and these guys, I just said, hey, what do you guys have on tap? And they said, hey, you're not from around here. I'm going, I said 6 words. So I started talking to these guys. But it's just true, right? That's the human nature. Something marked me out. My nerdy American clothes, my accent, bad hair, I don't know what it was. They just knew I was an American. Well, here's what I'm thinking about. Yeah, it made me first of all think of a story in the Gospels in Matthew 26. That exact thing happens to Peter. One of the reasons he denies Christ is he's cornered and he's facing a tough situation. They go, hey, you can't deny it. We can hear your Galilean accent. You're one of them. His accent gave him away. There's something about us that marks us who we are, and we can't get away from it. Here's my question, what we're going to look at today. Very simple, but I think very important. What should mark us, not as Americans, but what should mark us as followers of Christ? Is it an accent? Is it Christian t-shirts? Hope not. Christian music? Is it Facebook posts about politics or a new text discovered in a mummy mask? Are those the things that should mark us as Christians today? I hope not. And I hope that when we look at scriptures, we'll find there's something a little bit more beautiful and deeper than that. We're going to go to John chapter 13. You know I love John. I go there a lot, and I always tell you about how he's an old man, because he is an old man when he writes this. And he was a dear friend of Jesus. And what's happened here in the particular biopic, the Greco-Roman narrative, is he's telling about Jesus, a very specific genre of the Romans at this time. Of course, he's Jewish, and he's writing in this culture, in this world. In John 13, he's about to transition. He's told a whole bunch of random stories, and John, above any other gospel author, makes it very clear that Jesus was incarnate, God in the flesh, from his opening beautiful prologue to his stories of divinity and his grace and love. And he's told all these stories about his friends. And then I think he almost, this is just my theory, emotionally writes the beginning of John 13 because he's about to transition the whole gospel towards the end of the life of his dear friend. Let's go to John 13 and see what it says. It says, "It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father." And then this is what I think John might have written with some emotion, thinking of his friend. "Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end." I think he was remembering his friend. And I think as he's writing this biography, going, I'm about to tell them about the Last Supper and the crucifixion. And the thing that he was struck with is he loved us to the very end. And you're going to see that in the story that he's about to tell. It was shocking to him. Here's some context, too. He says it's the Passover festival. You got to remember, we always look back as modern readers, but we forget that these were Jewish people who didn't have to go to school to learn about context and things like that. They lived in a Jewish world, in a world where space had a different element to it, and time had a different element to it. The geography was different. For them, Jerusalem wasn't just a city. It was the place at the center of the world. And the temple wasn't just a place to go to worship. It was the intersection of heaven and earth. They believed that the temple was the presence of the one God of the universe in the temple. That's what they believed. And they had beliefs about time, and you can see it here. John thematically uses this word hour, the hour approach, because time was a big deal to Jewish people. They thought about Sabbath. When they looked at the creation narrative that God created this beautiful world and he rested in it, it was like the glory of God will someday in Sabbath rest in the world. And that Sabbath became a signpost for the Jewish people. They rested every 7 days to be a signpost that someday God will inhabit the creation again. We will be at rest and in peace in God. And John is saying here that the time had come. This is the Sabbath. This is the end of the 70 weeks that Daniel talks about. All these Jewish things that are hard for us to grasp would be common sense to these guys. And when all of that fulfillment had come and God had shown up and Jesus made these great claims that he is the new temple. And when he challenged the Sabbath, he wasn't just challenging legalism. He was saying, I am the fulfillment of rest. God is now inhabiting creation again. And John understood that. God has become king. That was the theme. The kingdom of God is here. That's who Jesus was. And John, among all else, understood the grandiose claims Jesus was making. Why am I saying all this? Because that's what makes the next part so shocking. Verse 4. Talking about Jesus. So he got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. It actually says in the Greek that he took off multiple clothes. It says outer garment in the NIV, but the thing that's unique about this, that they wouldn't have missed, is he had gone down to a loincloth. We know this because we read a lot of rabbinical literature and the customs of the day and the Talmud and different commentaries. And the thing is, see, there's only one type of person that washed feet in this culture. Slaves. And they wore loincloths. And so all of the stuff that John understood and all the great claims of Jesus being the temple, the fulfillment, God in the human body, all of a sudden he takes his clothes off and says, I'm a slave and I'm going to wash your dirty Galilean feet, my dear friends. This would have been really weird to accept. We'll see as Simon Peter responds. He came to Simon Peter and said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? In the Greek, Lord, do you wash my feet? In shock, Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. In the Greek, it's really weird. He says, you shall never wash my feet forever. It's almost like a child pouting. Never, forever, forever, never wash my feet. Not going to happen. And actually, it makes sense. It's actually kind of noble and humble and beautiful of Peter, who's all in on everything he does. You can't be the servant. You can't be the slave. You are God. And Jesus is saying, you're just going to have to trust me. You have to go with me on this, and you'll understand it someday. Jesus answers, unless I wash you, you have no part of me. In typical fashion, Simon Peter's going to overcorrect too far. Then, Lord, Simon Peter replies, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Wash all of me. It's a quick change of mind, but that's Peter. He's all in. He just wants to get it right. And he's saying, bathe me. And the beautiful part that's next says, Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. Again, this is not the point of the message today, but I just want to take a little tangent. That little section right there has been a great encouragement to me in my life. See, I struggled. When I first started to enter into a relationship with Jesus, it's always hard to have words for what that process is like. Coming to know that the God of the universe loves me. I knew that intellectually, I guess. People were telling me, but it wouldn't sink in for me. I wasn't ever really sure if I was truly clean and forgiven before God. Because I knew that I wasn't clean. I knew that I still had deep problems in my heart. And in my deepest levels, I wasn't sure. And this verse has been a great consolence to me over the years. Over the years, I've realized that this is spoken to us. We sometimes want to say, God, save me. I want to be pure. And he's saying, you already are. Not because of you, but because of him and what he's done. You're already made whole if you've known Christ in this way. But that doesn't mean sometimes we don't need a tune-up. It doesn't mean that he doesn't still want to make us the best version of ourselves. We need our feet clean sometimes. But it doesn't mean that we're lost or we're not clean as a whole. And I think that's a beautiful thing. However, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to skip down. What happens after this, I heavily skip over. I want you to go back and read the whole context. It's all about Judas, and it's not really directly relative to what we're talking about today. And the betrayal, and the scene of the Last Supper where John leans back on Jesus' breast, one of the most heartful things ever painted in all of human history. We're going to skip down to this thing that I think is going to help us with our question of what should identify us as Christians. This is verse 34, which I don't think is up there. It says, it is, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another, or if you love people, some translations say. You see where I'm going with this? This is not rocket science theologically. This is simple, beautiful Christianity. The thing that should mark us so that people will look in and say, hey, it's not your accent or your clothes or your Facebook posts. It's that you love people. That's what Christianity is about. This is it in a nutshell. We are loved, therefore we love. Let me tell you, John, who wrote this, I think probably emotionally remembering it, was marked by this. We have more things written by John. 1 John, 2 John. We have all these things where we see him come back to this theme again and again. He says in 1 John, we love because he first loved us. And he says if you don't love other people, you don't have the love of God in you. Outside of the Bible, the ancient church father Jerome, he wrote stories about John when John became the bishop of Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey. And when he was there, he said, Jerome tells us that John as a leader would say one response to everything with the drama of a giant church. He would say, just love people. Love people. That's all you got to do. I knew Jesus. He wants you to love people. That's what Jerome said, John said over and over again. He was marked forever by his encounter with Jesus who taught this message. He wasn't the only one. I mentioned Peter being called out for his accent. If we go to Acts 4, this is something I've shared in here before, but it's one of my favorite things. Peter was a coward. He denied the Lord with his Galilean hick accent and did all this stuff. But then he radically transformed after he encountered the risen Christ. And Luke tells us, he tells us that Peter went on to be a very bold and courageous person who shared this love. In Acts chapter 4, verse 12, this is Peter preaching to a whole crowd in Jerusalem. He says, salvation is found in no one else. He's beginning to give this message of God's love to everyone. For there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. Now listen to this in verse 13. When they, talking about the crowd, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. Now, what was it that marked them? Was it their schooling and their education? Was it their extraordinariness? No. Was it their accent? No. It's that they were proclaiming this message of love, and it says specifically their courage. Doesn't that sound like their Lord? Remember Jesus constantly saying, take courage. Let's remember that idea that we can be courageous, we can be bold, we can love when it's hard, and I think that's one of the unique things of a Christian worldview, is that in courage we can love the unlovable. It's great to love your family and friends that love you, but do you love people that are really hard to love? Because when you do, the world says, I can tell that these guys have been with Jesus. They remembered that Jesus' message was love. Well, so what? What's the relevance for us here? Well, I think it's pretty obvious and easy. The first thing is very simple, and I hope you never come to the Commons and miss this very easy truth. You are loved. Don't worry about this question. It's super easy. If you're saying, I don't know if I'm loved because I've done this in my past, or I've thought this, or I've believed this, and you're going, I don't know if God can love me, I've got great news. He loves you. He absolutely loves you. And that's the starting point, not just for all of us on our journey to security in God and relationship, but the starting point, hopefully, of every day for all of us. We should wake up and remember that we are loved by God. That should be the starting point of our day. Because that's where the love flows out of, is what John tells us. It's because we're loved that we then love. Now, here's my question for you if you're following Christ. Who are you loving? Who are you loving that's hard to love? Because I hope, this is a huge pet peeve of mine, I hope you're not the type of Christian that is trying to show the world you're a Christian by wearing a Christian t-shirt or posting something on Facebook. Stop it. It doesn't help us. Let me tell you why. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. One of the things that Christians are known for is what they're against instead of what they're for. This is a problem with the world that we live in. We should be marked as Christians, as people who follow Christ, by what we're for. We're for love. Now, it's sometimes complicated. That's not just some sort of hippie, all-inclusive thing. Sometimes love is very complicated and beautiful and dark and twisted. It's a great journey to go on. But we better be marked by love and what we're for more than what we're against. My specific challenge for you is to think about how you can beam that kind of light. You see, Jesus talked about this strange thing about being a city on a hill or a light in a lamp that can't be hidden. See, I think that glow, that glory, is love. When we love other people, when we love our fellow brothers and sisters in this room, when we love unlovable people, when we love our dear friend Bilal in Istanbul, I mean, our Facebook friends, how could I love them any more than that? It's the deepest love you can have. That's the challenge for us. Think about, in this time, who can you love? How can you glow like that? How can we start to change the way people see Christians? Because we're marked not by anything else other than a really, really extravagant love. It's a great response to be able to come to the communion table. That's what this is a picture of. It was Jesus' idea. It unfolded after these events. John tells us in the other synoptic gospels to tell us that what happened after this Last Supper and at that Last Supper is he had the idea of saying, hey, this bread that we're eating is kind of like my body broken, and the wine that we're drinking into us is like my blood spilt. He said to do this in remembrance of me. Remember me. Remember my message of love. Remember that I shocked the world by showing them who I was in the context of all these things, God in the flesh, and then I washed feet, and I died a violent death instead of choosing violence. That's Jesus, and we're supposed to remember that. We're supposed to remember that he loves us that much. So as we come to the communion table today, if you've never been here before, we have 4 different places here. We celebrate an open table. We believe it's easy to know that Jesus would welcome anyone at his table. We also believe it's an optional table. There might be many reasons, and you should feel no pressure. You need to partake. But what we do together is we put Christ in us. We take these physical elements and we receive his love. We remember that he loves us. And then together as a family sharing this meal, we hope that we are inspired. Think about the actual etymology of that word, the Spirit in you. That's what being inspired is. We ask God to inspire us, the Spirit of God to fill us up so that we can go in love. Let me pray over these elements and we'll share this time. God, thank you. Thank you for the gift of Eucharist and communion. I thank you, God, that you would dress as a slave, as God, and wash the feet of those men and women and children in that room that day. It's amazing. We're thankful for that, God. Thank you that you're that kind of God. And God, we ask you, Lord, as we're all together as family, will you please forgive us of our sins? We thank you that we can't out-sin your grace, and we receive your forgiveness. We thank you for your broken body. We thank you for your spilled blood. We thank you for the hope that that brings us. And God, we also celebrate a meal together, God. We sit next to family, and we forgive as we have been forgiven. God, give us that indwelling of your Spirit and power to forgive unlovable people. It's hard, and you do that and make us like that. We thank you for the grace that you give us. We thank you for the fellowship of this time and this space. We love you.